As I stood at the entrance of the church, the sight before me was something I could never have imagined in my wildest dreams. My son, David, and my daughter, Claire, had decided to hang a photo of me at the entrance with a glaring caption, "No entry." A photo of me, the very woman who had loved and cared for them all these years, who had supported them through thick and thin, who had built a home for them to grow up in, and now, in my final years, they chose to disgrace me in front of everyone at my husband's funeral. I felt the bile rise in my throat, but I couldn't let them see the tears welling up in my eyes. It was a moment I thought I'd never experience, my own children treating me with such disrespect. I was 75 years old. I had spent my entire life raising them, teaching them values, giving them everything I had, even when life was hard, even when it felt like the world was against us. And now this. I watched as the guests filed into the church, unaware of the sign that hung above my photo. No one seemed to notice at first, but my heart sank as I caught the whispers. My son had orchestrated this. He had always been the one who resented me, the one who never understood the sacrifices I made for this family. But Claire? She had always been so sweet, so loving. What had happened? How could they both turn on me like this? And then, just as I was about to walk away, something caught my eye. A figure in the crowd, someone who shouldn't have been there. Someone who would change everything. Who would reveal something so shocking that it would make my children's betrayal seem insignificant. But what could it be? Who was this person, and what were they doing here? I couldn't move. My feet were frozen to the ground. I could only watch, with my heart pounding in my chest, as the mystery person walked towards me. But before I could speak, Claire turned to me and said, "You're not welcome here." The words felt like a slap in the face. They stung more than the photo, more than the humiliation. The room seemed to close in around me, and I had to take a step back, but I was trapped. I looked up at the photo again, and for a moment, I thought I saw a reflection in the glass. A reflection that wasn't mine, a reflection that shouldn't have been there. Was that my late husband's face? Why was he there? Why was he watching me? The answers to these questions lay just beyond the surface, but at that moment, I couldn't see them. All I could see was the pain in my children's eyes, the anger, the resentment. They had pushed me out, and now they were throwing me away. But they didn't realize what I still had in me. They didn't know who I really was, or what I was about to do. As I stood there, in the midst of all this chaos, the one thought that kept running through my mind was, what am I going to do next? The day I married Tom was one of the happiest of my life. He was my rock, my partner, my love. Together, we built everything we had, from the small house we started in to the business that eventually made us a comfortable life. But that life came with sacrifices. Sacrifices I made for my children. Sacrifices I made for their future. They were everything to me. I remember the late nights working at the bakery, long after Tom had gone to bed. I remember missing so many school recitals, so many events, because I had to work to make sure they had what they needed. I worked my fingers to the bone, doing everything I could to give them the life they deserved. But did they ever realize how much I gave up for them? Did they ever see the toll it took on me? David, my firstborn, had always been a difficult child. He never understood why I had to work so hard, why I couldn't always be there when he needed me. But I thought things would get better as he got older, as he matured. Claire, on the other hand, was always my little angel. She understood. She appreciated everything I did for her. Or so I thought. As I stood in the church that day, watching the guests pass by and whisper, I couldn't help but remember the good times, the memories that made this betrayal so much harder to accept. I thought of the times we laughed together, the times we shared joy, the times we loved each other. But now, all of that felt like a distant memory. How did we go from that to this? How did my children turn on me so quickly? They didn't know the truth. They didn't know the sacrifices I had made, the things I had done to make sure they had a future. But they were about to learn. As I stood there, I noticed the stranger from earlier. He was still watching me. His presence was unsettling, and my curiosity got the better of me. I started walking towards him, but before I could reach him, I saw him talking to one of the funeral directors. There was something about the way they spoke, something that didn't sit right with me. I was about to ask him who he was when Claire appeared beside me again. "Don't make a scene, Mom," she said, her voice cold. "Just leave. You're embarrassing yourself." I felt a tear slip down my cheek. "Is that all I am to you now?" I whispered, but she didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked away. But I wasn't going to let this go. I knew something was off, and I was about to find out exactly what. The more I tried to push the thoughts of what happened that day out of my mind, the harder it became. What had happened to my children? What had gone wrong? I spent the next few days in a daze, replaying the funeral over and over in my head, trying to make sense of what had happened. The strangers, the betrayal, the photograph, and my children's cruelty. It all felt like a nightmare. But there was more. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the whole situation, like there was something I was missing. I decided to confront my children. I couldn't let them get away with this. They owed me an explanation, and I was going to get one. It was a week after the funeral when I decided to call David. I'd been putting it off, trying to gather the strength to face him, but now I had no choice. I picked up the phone and dialed his number. My heart raced as it rang. Finally, he picked up. "Hello." His voice was distant, cold. "David," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." He sighed on the other end. "What about, Mom?" "About the funeral. About the photo. About everything," I said, my voice shaking. "I need to understand why." There was a long pause. And then, finally, his voice cracked. "I did it because I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of you always being the perfect mother, always being the martyr. It's over, Mom. I don't need you anymore." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. But before I could say anything, the line went dead. I was stunned, frozen in place. "I don't need you anymore." The words echoed in my mind, repeating over and over. What was I going to do now? I spent the next few days in a whirlwind of emotions. I had to find a way to take control of this situation. I couldn't let my children think they could just throw me away. I couldn't let them ruin everything I had worked for. And then, as I sat in my living room, staring out the window at the life I had built, I received a phone call from an old family friend, someone I hadn't heard from in years. His name was Frank, and he was someone I trusted implicitly. "Frank, what is it?" I asked, answering the phone. "You need to sit down, Diana," he said, his voice grave. "I have information you need to hear." "What kind of information?" "It's about your husband's estate. And about your children." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What about them?" "They've been hiding something from you. Something that changes everything." And with that, he told me the truth. The truth about what my children had been planning behind my back. The truth that would change everything. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed, was slipping away from me. But what Frank had told me on that phone call was a game changer. The moment he said those words, my entire world shifted. "You've been kept in the dark, Diana. Your husband's will is not what you think it is. And your children have no idea what's coming." The more Frank spoke, the more it became clear to me that my children had been manipulating me for years. They'd taken advantage of my kindness, my naivety, and now they thought they could control everything, including the estate I had shared with Tom. But there was one thing they didn't know. Tom had made provisions for me, provisions they hadn't discovered. I had always trusted my husband. Even though we didn't always agree, he had never once betrayed me. When he passed away, I thought the estate was settled. I thought the house, the savings, the property, and everything we built together were mine to keep. But I was wrong. I had learned that Tom had hidden a separate will from everyone, one that left me everything. The business, the house, the investments, all of it. It was in a safe place, tucked away where no one would find it until the time was right. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just sit back and let David and Claire think they were in control of everything. The way they treated me, the way they thought they could get away with all their lies, it enraged me. But I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just walk into their lives and take what was rightfully mine.
No.
I had to make sure they understood the consequences of their actions. They had pushed me to the edge. Now it was time for me to push back. I spent hours going over the details of Tom's secret will. It was hidden in a lockbox in the attic. No one had ever suspected it was there. My heart pounded as I gathered everything I needed to put my plan into action. But just as I was about to leave the house, Claire arrived unexpectedly. She looked at me, her eyes cold, but there was something else, fear, maybe? "You think you can just take everything, don't you?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I stood tall, not letting her see the pain in my eyes. "I'm not taking anything, Claire. This was never yours to begin with." I could see the guilt in her eyes as she stepped back, but I didn't have time to process it. "We'll see how this plays out," I said, my voice low. I didn't need to say anything more. She knew exactly what I meant. As I walked past her, I couldn't help but wonder if she knew more than she was letting on. She had always been a sweet child, but now something was different. Had she known about the will all along? The next few days felt like a blur. The more I thought about it, the more questions I had. There was something in the air, something sinister that I couldn't put my finger on. But one thing was clear: I couldn't trust anyone anymore, not even Claire. That night, I went to the attic, the place where Tom had hidden everything. The lockbox was still there, untouched, hidden beneath a pile of old boxes. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside, I found not only the will, but something else. Something that made my stomach churn. There were letters, documents, things I had never seen before. My heart raced as I picked them up. But the more I read, the more I understood. The truth was far darker than I had imagined. And this secret would shake my children to their core. I could feel the tension building inside me. With every step I took, I felt like I was drawing closer to something big, something that would change everything. The will, the letters, and the documents. None of them were what I had expected. The lies were deeper than I had ever thought. Tom hadn't just hidden money from me. He had hidden the truth about my children. But now I had the power. Now I could make them see the truth. I made the decision to confront David. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to let him get away with the way he had treated me. Not anymore. I called him up, my hand trembling as I held the phone to my ear. "David," I said, my voice steady but forceful. "We need to talk. Now." He didn't hesitate. I could tell from his voice that he knew something was wrong. "What's going on, Mom?" he asked, a hint of fear in his voice. "I know what you've been doing," I said, my words cutting through the silence. "I know about the will, and I know about everything you've been hiding from me." There was a long pause on the other end. "What are you talking about?" he asked, but I could hear the nervousness in his voice. "Don't play dumb with me, David. I know everything. I know about the money, about the lies. I know you've been using me." The silence was deafening. And then finally he spoke. "You don't know everything, Mom. There's a lot more going on than you think." His words sent a shiver down my spine. What more could there possibly be? What was he hiding? I stood up, my knees shaking, but my resolve stronger than ever. "You can't hide from me anymore, David. I will make sure you pay for what you've done." The line went dead. And just like that, I knew this wasn't over. Far from it. The phone call with David left me reeling. His words were cryptic, unsettling, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play than I could see. As the days went on, I could feel the weight of what was happening pressing down on me. My children, the very ones I had nurtured, loved, and sacrificed for, were hiding something that could destroy them and everything I had worked for. But what could it be? I sat in my study, the documents from the lockbox spread out in front of me. Every word on those pages seemed to unravel the life I thought I had with Tom. The letters Tom had left behind were more than just instructions about the estate. They were confessions, secrets hidden in plain sight, things I could never have imagined. My hands trembled as I read. There it was, in black and white, the truth about David and Claire's relationship with Tom. They had known about the second will all along. They had known that Tom had left everything to me, and that's why they had been pushing me away, trying to manipulate me. But it wasn't just about money. It was about power. They wanted to control everything, and they were willing to do whatever it took to make sure I didn't have a say in anything. The room felt cold. My mind raced as I processed what I had just read.
How could they do this to me?
How could my own children betray me so deeply? This wasn't just about inheritance. This was about my very place in their lives. They had been plotting behind my back for years, and now, with Tom gone, they thought they could take everything from me. I sat in silence, staring at the documents, the weight of the world on my shoulders. But something else bubbled up inside me, a feeling I hadn't felt in a long time: determination. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. They had underestimated me, and now it was my turn to turn the tables. The next step was clear. I needed to confront Claire. I had to know the full extent of their betrayal. I couldn't let them drag me down any further. The next morning, I called Claire. I could hear the hesitation in her voice when she answered. "Mom, what is it now?" she asked, her tone sharp, defensive. "We need to talk. Face to face. About everything." There was a pause on the other end, and then, "I don't have time for this. Just let it go, okay?" "No," I said firmly. "I won't let it go. I want the truth, Claire. I want to know what you and David have been hiding from me." She sighed, and there was an unmistakable edge to her voice. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're just making things worse for yourself." "No, Claire. You're the one making things worse. You've been lying to me for years. And now, it's time for you to face the consequences." The line went silent. I could feel her frustration, but I also felt a sense of satisfaction. She was starting to crack. "I'm coming over. We're going to settle this once and for all." Her response was quick. "Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you." I hung up, my heart pounding with anticipation. I knew the conversation ahead would be difficult, but I was ready. I was done being the passive one, the one who forgave and forgave without receiving anything in return. I had given them everything, and now they would have to face the reality of their actions. Please like, comment, and subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens next. Will Claire crack under pressure? What will the truth reveal? I stood at the door, my hand hovering over the doorknob. I knew that once I opened it, nothing would be the same. Claire had agreed to come over, but deep down, I knew this conversation would change everything. When I opened the door, she was standing there, her arms crossed, her face as cold as ever. But there was something else in her eyes, something I couldn't quite place. Guilt? Regret? Fear? "Come in," I said, stepping aside to let her into the living room. She walked in slowly, her gaze shifting around the room, as if trying to avoid making eye contact with me. She seemed nervous, but I couldn't tell why. Was she afraid of me? Or was she afraid of what I might know? We sat down on opposite ends of the room, the distance between us almost palpable. The silence between us was suffocating, but I wasn't going to break it. I had waited long enough. Finally, I spoke. "Claire, I know what you and David have been doing. I know about the will. I know about the lies, the manipulation, and I want the truth." Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't speak. She just stared at me, her mouth pressed into a thin line. "Tell me everything, Claire. I deserve to know." There was a long pause before she finally spoke. "You're right. I should have told you before. But I didn't want to hurt you, Mom. I didn't want you to know how far we'd gone to keep everything from you. But it's not just about the money, okay? It's about everything we thought we deserved." I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then let out a shaky breath. "We thought you didn't need any of it anymore. We thought you were holding us back, holding on to things that didn't matter. But now we realize how wrong we were. How much we've hurt you." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. They were finally admitting it. After all these years, after all the lies and deceit, they were admitting the truth. But was it too late? I looked at her, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. "You didn't just hurt me, Claire. You hurt everything we built, everything I've worked for." Her eyes filled with tears as she looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "I know, Mom. I know." But as I watched her, I realized something. She wasn't the enemy here. No, the enemy was much bigger than that. The real threat wasn't just my children. It was the years of secrets, the years of hiding the truth from everyone. And the most dangerous part was yet to come. The days after my conversation with Claire were a blur of emotions, realizations, and planning. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe again. Claire had finally admitted the truth, and although it didn't fix everything, it gave me a sense of relief. But I knew I couldn't stop here. The damage was done, but the next step would be even harder. David hadn't spoken to me since that fateful phone call, but I wasn't waiting for him anymore. I knew what I had to do. There was only one way to fix this. I had to confront them both, together, and make them see the consequences of their actions. I called Claire and told her to bring David over to the house. It was time for the reckoning. They arrived, nervous, unsure of what to expect. But they had no idea what I had planned. I had the documents, the proof of what they had done, and now it was time for them to face the truth. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. When they sat down, I laid the documents in front of them, the will, the letters, everything. This is what Tom left me. Everything. Not just the estate, but his last wishes. And you've been lying to me, manipulating me, trying to take everything for yourselves. David looked down at the table, his face pale, his expression defeated. You don't understand, Mom, he said, his voice low. We thought we were doing the right thing. We thought we deserved more. I shook my head. That's where you were wrong. You never deserved this. You didn't earn it. And now, you'll have to live with the consequences. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel the weight of what was about to happen. But before I could speak again, David looked up, his eyes full of guilt and regret. What now, Mom? I smiled, a sense of calm washing over me. Now, we begin the healing process. And you'll both learn what it means to truly face the consequences of your actions. But as I said the words, I felt a shift in the room. Something wasn't right. There was a knock at the door. And when I opened it, my heart stopped. I stood frozen at the door, my heart pounding in my chest. Who could it be now? Was it someone from the funeral? Another relative? Or, perhaps, someone connected to the dark secrets I had just uncovered? I could feel my pulse quicken as the knock echoed in my ears. Slowly, I turned the doorknob, unsure of what to expect on the other side. When I opened the door, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Standing there in the doorway was a man I hadn't seen in years. His presence was almost too much to bear. He was tall, his face lined with age, but there was no mistaking who he was. It was Richard, my late husband's brother. Richard? I whispered, my voice trembling. What are you doing here? He gave me a tired smile, but there was something in his eyes that sent a chill down my spine. I'm sorry to show up like this, Diana, but there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you a long time ago. My breath caught in my throat. What could he possibly have to say after all these years? After everything that had happened? I stepped aside, letting him into the house, my mind racing with questions. What did he know? What could he possibly reveal that could change everything? As he entered, I could see the discomfort in Claire and David's faces. They had no idea who this man was, and they couldn't understand why I was so rattled. But Richard had been an integral part of my life, and his return was no coincidence. You should sit down, Richard said, looking at all of us. This isn't easy to explain. David, who had been silent until now, narrowed his eyes. What's going on? Why is he here, Mom? Claire looked equally confused, but something in her expression shifted. A flicker of recognition? No, more like fear. Richard took a deep breath, and then he spoke the words that turned everything upside down. I'm not here to make things harder on you, Diana, but you need to understand something about Tom, about everything that's been happening. I could see the tension in their faces, the way Claire and David were leaning forward, hanging on to his every word. Richard had their attention now, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for what he was about to say. Tom wasn't just your husband, Richard continued, his voice low and serious. He was my brother, yes, but there's more to the story. I know about the will, but what you don't know is that your children, your son and daughter, they've been manipulated by someone else. A shiver ran down my spine as I looked at Claire and David, both of them now visibly shaken. "What are you talking about?" David asked, his voice cracking. "Who's been manipulating us?" Richard's eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of regret in his gaze. "Your children are not the only ones who've been hiding things. It wasn't just about the estate, Diana. It was about control, about power. And I'm afraid there's someone much closer to you than you realize who has been pulling the strings." My heart skipped a beat. Who could it be? Who had been playing this sick game with my family all this time? "No," I whispered, as the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. "It can't be." Claire's eyes widened in shock, and David looked at me with confusion, but Richard wasn't finished. "It was always about the money, Diana. But now, you're about to find out how deep this betrayal really goes. You were never meant to know the full truth." Before I could process his words, a knock came at the door again. But this time, it wasn't a mere visitor. The moment the door opened, a group of men in suits walked in, and behind them was a familiar face I never expected to see. It was Charles, the man who had once been Tom's closest business partner, but who had vanished years ago, leaving us with nothing but questions. But now he was standing here in my living room with a smug grin on his face. "Hello, Diana," Charles said, his voice dripping with false politeness. "I'm afraid you've been kept in the dark for far too long." My world felt like it was crashing down around me. How could this man be here now, after all this time? What was his connection to all of this? But Richard, standing beside me, finally spoke again. "This man," he gestured to Charles, "has been the one controlling everything from behind the scenes. He's the one who manipulated David and Claire, and he's the one who has been pulling the strings for years. He's the one who thought he could take everything from you, Diana. But he underestimated you." I turned to face Charles, my blood boiling as I spoke. "You thought you could take my family, my home, my legacy, and you thought I wouldn't fight back? You thought you could destroy me?" Charles's grin faded slightly, but his confidence never wavered. "You were always a pawn, Diana. A pawn in a much bigger game. The money, the power, it was never yours. It was always mine." A chill ran through me. This man had been behind the curtains, pulling every string, destroying the fabric of my family. But now I knew the truth. It was all out in the open. I could see David and Claire, both of them looking at me as if they were seeing me for the first time. Claire, now realizing how deeply she had been manipulated, could no longer hold back the tears. David, too, seemed broken, his face etched with regret. "This is it," Richard said, his voice steady. "The truth is out. And now, Diana, it's time for you to make your choice." I looked at them all, at the people who had hurt me, betrayed me, and manipulated me, and I realized something. The power had always been mine. It was time to take it back. "This isn't over," I said, my voice strong. "I'm going to make sure you all pay for what you've done. This family, my family, will never be the same again. And neither will you." The days following the revelation were tense, charged with an energy I hadn't felt in years. I was surrounded by the fallout of what had just happened. Charles, the mastermind behind everything, had come back into my life after all these years, and he hadn't expected me to fight back. Neither had David nor Claire. I knew my next steps had to be calculated. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me. But I couldn't do this alone. I needed more than just the secrets Tom had left behind. I needed strategy, influence, and leverage. I needed a plan to make sure they all understood the weight of their betrayal. It started with Charles. When he thought he had me cornered, when he thought I was just a victim in all of this, he hadn't counted on one thing: my ability to play the game just as well as he had. I took the letters that Frank had sent me and went straight to my lawyer. After all, what good were secrets if they didn't come with consequences? The law was my weapon now, and I was ready to wield it. Sitting in my lawyer's office, I watched as she reviewed the documents. Her eyes widened as she pieced together what I had found. "This is it, Diana," she said. "This will destroy them." I nodded, feeling a calm sense of purpose. This was no longer just about money. It was about justice, about reclaiming my dignity. "Let's do it," I said firmly. But what I didn't know was that as I was preparing for battle, Claire and David were already having their own private conversation. The tension between them had been building for days. They had no idea how deep the game had gone, but they knew they were at the center of it. "Mom's going to make us pay, isn't she?" Claire asked, her voice soft, almost regretful. David ran a hand through his hair, his face tired and filled with guilt. "We've already hurt her more than we can ever undo." But even as they faced the reality of what they had done, they were still bound by the choices they had made. And I knew, deep down, they hadn't truly learned their lesson yet. It was the night before everything was set to unfold. The day I had planned to take my case to court was drawing near, and I couldn't sleep. The weight of what was coming hung heavily on my mind. I took a walk through the house, the place that had once been filled with laughter, love, and warmth. Now it felt like a shell, empty, cold. I could feel the echoes of the years spent raising my children, nurturing them, loving them. And yet, it had all been for nothing. My mind wandered back to when I first met Tom. We were young, full of dreams, thinking the world was ours for the taking. We built everything together. This house, the life we shared, our children. But somehow, along the way, I had become the one who sacrificed the most, who gave everything up. I gave my heart to my children, but they had broken it, time and time again. I hadn't been the perfect mother, the perfect wife, and I didn't expect to be. But I had always tried. And now I was paying for it. I was paying with the love of my children, the family I had built. But I wasn't about to let this define me. I had one final chance to make things right, to expose the truth. I could feel the power building inside me. I wasn't just doing this for me anymore. I was doing it for every person who had ever been wronged, who had given everything for others and gotten nothing in return. This was my reckoning, and I wasn't going to back down. I knew what I had to do next. The truth wasn't just mine to hold. It was time to make the world see it, to show David, Claire, and everyone else just how far they had pushed me. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of my lawyer. "We're ready," I said, my voice steady. "Let's do this." The day of the court hearing arrived, and the tension in the air was thick. My children had no idea what they were walking into. They thought they could control this, thought they could hide their betrayal behind closed doors. But they were wrong. As I sat in the courtroom, I could see Claire and David sitting across from me, their faces tense and filled with guilt. I knew they were scared of what was about to happen, and I could see the uncertainty in their eyes. They hadn't expected me to fight back, hadn't expected me to have the courage to stand up for myself. But as the case unfolded, I realized something. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was about reclaiming my power. It was about showing them that I was stronger than they thought. The room went silent as my lawyer presented the evidence. Tom's secret will, the documents detailing the manipulation that had taken place, the letters from Richard and Frank. The truth was undeniable. David and Claire exchanged glances, their faces paling as the evidence mounted against them. They had no way of denying it now. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. The judge leaned forward, his eyes stern as he addressed them. "Your actions have not only hurt your mother, but they have also broken the trust that once held this family together. You will be held accountable for what you've done." I could see the weight of the words sinking in, and for the first time, I saw David's eyes fill with tears. He didn't speak, but I could tell the guilt was eating him up inside. Claire, too, seemed to shrink under the judge's gaze. But the most shocking moment came when the judge looked directly at me. "Diana," he said, his voice calm, yet filled with respect, "your courage in bringing this case to light has been extraordinary. Your actions will not go unnoticed. I am ruling in your favor." The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. It wasn't just about winning the case. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my place in the world. It was about showing my children that they couldn't take away everything I had worked for. But as the judge banged the gavel, I knew that this was just the beginning. There would be more battles ahead. The real fight was yet to come. The aftermath of the courtroom battle was nothing short of explosive. The headlines were everywhere, the news buzzing with the story of a mother who had taken on her children and won. But behind the scenes, the fallout was just beginning. David and Claire tried to reach out, trying to apologize, but the damage was done. They had shown me who they truly were, and I couldn't go back. They had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and while I had won in court, I had lost them. As the days went by, I focused on rebuilding my life. I made changes to the house, changed the locks, and even changed my will. No one would ever have the power to manipulate me again. I was free. Free from the guilt, the lies, and the toxic bonds that had held me captive for far too long. And as I sat in the quiet of my home, I realized something. I was finally at peace. The past had been filled with heartbreak, but now I could see a future that was all mine. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a survivor. And this story wasn't over. It was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, I began to make plans for a new life, one that didn't revolve around the past or the mistakes I had made. It was my time to thrive, my time to find joy again. I enrolled in a course on art history, something I had always been passionate about but never had the time to pursue. I made new friends, ones who didn't know about my past or the family I had once loved. And I felt free. David and Claire, despite their attempts to reconcile, were nowhere to be found. They had retreated from my life, and that was fine. I didn't need them anymore. I had learned the hard way that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. But I had also learned that I was strong enough to heal, strong enough to move forward. And that was exactly what I did. I walked away from the pain and embraced the future with open arms. Please like, comment, and subscribe to see how Diana finds her strength after betrayal. Her journey is only just beginning.